So what are solutions? Solutions enable us to extend the common data service, and they also allow us to transport functionality between common data service environments. Before I go into solutions, it's worth touching on what a publisher is. So there's a record associated with a solution called a publisher, and that's a publisher record there. This is the CDS default publisher. Publishers provide us with information on who made the changes to the common data service, and partners in ISV should include their address and contact details. If you're working for an end user or you're in your own environment, it's just worth putting as much detail as possible in there, because these environments, especially in the online world, can be up for years and years, and so it's good just to keep that audit trail of who's making changes. There's also two very important attributes on a publisher, and that's the entity prefix and the option set value prefix, the option value prefix. The prefix on the entity prefix, anything you create within that solution, so whether it's an entity or it's a field, will contain that prefix at the start of it, followed by an underscore. So for example, I would maybe put PADI or Freefall365 or FF365. You could put the name of your company or abbreviated name of your company in that prefix, and then anybody who uses that system can see that those entities and fields and components were created by you. And the option set value is the same. It just differentiates the option set values from everybody else. And there's two default publishers now. There's the CDS default publisher, and that's distinguished by this CR5. I think I've seen CB in there as well at one point. And you've also got the default publisher. It's just called default publisher, I think, which starts by the new underscore prefix. So if ever you see that CR and then a random number, that's been created within the default solution by the common data service default publisher, and the new underscore tends to be done. My observations that's always done within the classic interface, and that's done by the default publisher. So a wee bit confusion between the different publishers, but I hope that kind of narrows out. But you shouldn't see that much anyway once you start using custom solutions. And to go back to custom solutions, as I mentioned, they're used to allow us to make changes and extend the common data service. And if you're making any changes at all to the common data service, then you're already using solutions. You might just not know it yet. If you make a change without using a custom solution, you're making that change to the default solution. See what I mean about the solutions? If I were doing a drinking game with that, it'd be a long night. And so the default solution contains every single component in the system, regardless of whether your component comes from or resides in a managed solution or an unmanaged solution. It will get put into the big bucket called the default solution. And it's like a big bucket of Lego. The pieces you put, the more pieces you put into it, the bigger and bigger it gets. And so over time, the number of pieces in our Lego gets confusing, and without an audit trail, it becomes difficult to track what these pieces are for and why they were added in the first place. And it also makes it impossible to segment those packets of functionality out and move them over to another bucket without just kind of copying the whole bucket and making it like the database and making a copy of the database. And the primary way to keep that audit of what pieces are going into the default solution are custom solutions. And there are two or three types, if we include the default solution, two types of custom solutions, sorry, the unmanaged and managed. And if we look at some of the properties here and compare them, an unmanaged solution is where you start your build. So you can create one of them within the Maker portal. A managed solution, on the other hand, will always be created from unmanaged components. In the past, would normally always be created from an unmanaged solution. You would export the unmanaged solution as a managed solution, but you can also create them from components by packaging them up using some of the Power Platform tools that Reese mentioned in his DevOps ALM session. An unmanaged solution, you can associate and change the publisher record. A managed solution, you can't. That's uneditable. You can't change the publisher record on it. So it's important to get the publisher correct before you export to the managed solution. You can also add new and existing components. to an unmanaged solution, whereas managed solutions are locked down. You can't add any more components to them. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you can't make unmanaged changes to them. And I'll try and explain that a wee bit later in this session. As I said earlier, you can export unmanaged solutions as managed and unmanaged, and managed solutions can't be exported. So you don't necessarily have to export an unmanaged solution as a managed solution. You can choose either one, and you can use unmanaged solutions to actually move components between environments as well. It doesn't just have to be unmanaged to managed into another environment. But you can delete managed solutions, and when you delete a managed solution, it installs all the components and the data that are within that solution. Unmanaged solutions are a bit different. On deletion, it's only the solution that's deleted, and all the components and the data stay in the bucket, which is the default solution in the big Lego bucket. So think of when you delete an unmanaged solution, it's kind of like just throwing away the manual for your Lego. The pieces are still in the bucket. You're just dismissing where they came from, and that's the solution container. Whereas when you delete the managed solution, it's like throwing away the manual and all the pieces. So you're getting rid of all those pieces out of your default solution. And I'm going to talk more Lego because it's probably the best way of describing it. This is a really wicked wee Lego crocodile that I made from wee boy Brogan. I haven't played with Lego in like over 30 years, so I was like dead chuffed when I made this. I mean, who wouldn't be? And then what I did, I just chucked it into the big tub of Lego that he's got. And a few weeks later, I went back to it and it was looking like this. And as you can see, it doesn't even resemble a crocodile. It's non-functional. It doesn't function as a crocodile anymore. It's lost what it was in the first place. And that's a bit like what happens what could happen if you release an unmanaged solution into an uncontrolled environment where there are other system admins and other makers there. You have inexperienced builders going in, messing about with your creation, and it can become non-functional. So if I knew that was going to happen to my beautiful wee crocodile, I would have took a few precautions. I would have probably put her in a managed solution. And that's kind of what a managed solution is like. It's like the Craggle in the Lego movie. It keeps a container that keeps things together, and it doesn't prevent, but it certainly makes it a wee bit difficult for things like that to happen to my Lego. And that would probably come out like this if I'd used the Craggle or if I used a managed solution. It still would resemble a crocodile. It should still contain most of our original functionality. But that's not necessarily to say it should be the same, because you can build on top of managed solutions as well in an unmanaged manner. And so if I would try to install this crocodile or my solution by just hitting delete or trying to remove it, it would stop me, because it's these other guys here, this wee fireman and this tower, I think it's a tower, depend on that solution, and that crocodile as part of their functionality. So I would get a dependency error, and I'd have to kind of pick it apart to try and get that back out in its original form. And so what I'll do now, I'll run through a few examples of managed and unmanaged solutions to try and demonstrate some of those points. So this is a CDS environment, and I've got this as my StudyMate dev environment. And we'll create if you've got a trial environment there that we created in the last session, you should have 2 environments if you did the homework. I'm sure we all did. But we'll create a new managed solution in our dev environment. So a new unmanaged solution in our dev environment, because that's where we start. And I'm just going to call it, just accounts. And we'll actually create a new publisher for this, just to show you how to create a publisher. And we're doing quite a bit of exporting and importing on this, so I hope we don't get too many spinning circles. It was going quite fast earlier. Do you all notice as well that any time you switch to the classic interface now, it takes a bit longer?
It's almost as if it's actively trying to discourage it.
Almost, yeah. I think they'd want us to move over, wouldn't they?
The fact that it asks you for feedback every time
Yeah.
is a huge red flag that it doesn't want you doing it anymore.
Do you know, I started giving it the feedback and I got fed up with it after a while. Because I was like, tell them what's missing, tell them why I'm doing it. And then over time,
One of the guys from Microsoft was on a podcast or somewhere on YouTube or something. He said he read every bit of feedback from those bits. It's like, crikey, I'll put some stuff in there.
Yeah, me too, Phil.
and I was very polite. Yeah. What I'll do, I'll just tell you what. The whole thing's going to go now, isn't it? Let's just pick one that's already there. If you have a look at, I want to do it that way. That's quick. So yeah, if you have a look at this publisher here, this is a publisher that I created. The prefix is FF365 and my option set value is 14530. It's worth noting that the option set value, as you put a prefix in there, it will just automatically generate an option set prefix based on that. I don't know if it's random or there's a formula to it, but it'll just generate one. So our publisher is 34365. And again, if you look down here, it's always worth putting a description. We'll maybe discuss later if I've got time, kind of what kind of things to put in your description. I normally put release notes or maybe a link to the user story or the feature that I'm developing. And you can only use unmanaged because you can only create an unmanaged solution in this way. So we'll create an unmanaged solution because this is a starting a build. It's just accounts, so we'll go into the solution and we'll add some components. We'll start off with adding an existing entity, and we'll just add the account entity. And this gives you the option to select subcomponents to add, so that's where you would select all your fields. I'm not going to add anything down because I want to show you how to add subcomponents after the entity has been added within the Maker experience, because it's something that I missed the first time. So that's just added our account entity with no subcomponents. And we'll also just create a new model-driven app. Earlier. And we notice again that prefix FF365 is the prefix that we gave our publisher. Let's leave the default settings. And we'll just add accounts on there. So this has got a very basic solution, an app and an entity. Again, what I was going to point out here is if I want to add subcomponents to account, I don't get the option while I'm in the account entity here. There isn't any way to add subcomponents, but if I go back out and select it.
Paddy, they just added it.
They've just added it, yeah.
They just added
Yeah, like go in, yeah.
Last week it was on the.
So go in. It's the same place. There it is.
Ah, see,
They wouldn't have when you prep
again.
this session.
I prepped like 5 minutes ago.
And it may not be there next week. You never know.
It might. You never know. You never know. No, I totally didn't see that. So all this week I've been adding subcomponents and come back in and out and not even noticing that. So yeah. So that's that. You can add subcomponents in there now. So let's add a subcomponent and we'll add the industry option set. It's a option set field with a list of industries associated to it. That's one of the default ones. And what we'll do, we'll go in and we'll just change one of the values in there. So we'll change vehicle retail to vehicle. Save that. So yeah, we've got a solution now with some customizations in it and a new app. And so we'll export that. I'm going back to solutions, select the solution and click export. And the first thing we'll do is just export it to unmanaged. I'll just hit publish just in case. It's worth noting the version number as well. The version number goes from major, minor, build, revision. I keep forgetting what it is. That tells you in that wee information bit there. Keep forgetting what it is, but that automatically increments. And it's important once you start getting into adding patches and cloning solutions and things like that. But we're exporting it as unmanaged in this case. And that's it downloaded. We'll jump over to our internal test environment. And I'm just going to import that as, again, an unmanaged solution by clicking the import button. When a solution is exported, it's just a zip file. Going to be here a while, aren't we? There's my just accounts. Let's import that as unmanaged. And when we import an unmanaged solution, it'll always ask us to publish all customizations as well. It won't do that when you're importing a managed solution. It'll automatically publish them for you. What we'll see here within our solution, it's still unmanaged. Oops, no, it's not. There, it's there. Still unmanaged, so the padlock's open. And you can go in, and those changes and apps are now in our new environment. So you don't need to copy them all over separately. In fact, if you go into apps, and we'll just publish the app, I can just play it straight away. That's our app now in that environment on that data set. And if we go into our data and entities, you can see that that change that we made in our previous environment's been carried over. Yeah, sorry. You've only got a vehicle there. So what happens if we delete that solution? Let's just go in there and hit delete. And we should go and see that absolutely nothing's happened. The solution container's gone. Like I said, it's like throwing away the leaflet or the manual that you've got, but your just accounts app and then your change that you made to the field within the entity is still there. what we'll do while we're in there, I'm just going to change that back. I'll delete the app out as well. And now what we'll do, we'll import a managed solution. So let's export, go over to dev environment, and we'll import our managed solution. Sorry, export our managed solution. So managed, click export. And then click over to our test environment. And you just import them in the same way. And the same thing will happen. We'll see that our change gets made. We don't need to publish all customizations. But what will happen when we try and delete it? Let's just check that's there. Again, we've got just accounts. Notice here that you can't add. Sorry, that's my Google Assistant going off. Notice here that you can't add or create new components within the solution. And if we go into account, we can see the change that's been made. That's the change there. But let's uninstall that now and see what happens. To uninstall, we just click delete. And if we go into entities now, our option set is back to what it was, and we'll no longer have an app because it uninstalls all the components within that solution. And that's really solutions. Unmanaged and managed solutions have a very brief intro to what they are and how they're used. I'll flick back to my slides. And there's one thing, so one of the big debates is whether you should be using unmanaged solutions in production environment or not. And it's one of the debates that's been going on since 2011. The only thing I'll mention now is that the definition of an unmanaged solution now is that an unmanaged solution is one that is still under development and isn't intended to be distributed. Now, there's rumours going around that Microsoft are actually going to stop you and prevent you putting unmanaged solutions into production. I don't know how true they are, but there's a lot of rumours going around that. But that definition really should kind of speak volumes. Because a lot of kind of, if you, like I said, with my Lego piece, I put that into an unmanaged in a production environment. Some unexperienced builder came along and started messing about with it. And that's the same thing that can happen with your unmanaged solutions. So that's maybe something we can discuss after it, whether you think unmanaged solutions should be in production or not. But certainly Microsoft are making it quite clear that they should be under development or intended to be distributed. So next steps, if you want to do more with solutions, is to come up with a first draft of an ALM process. So application lifecycle management process, create some environments. And if you want to know how to create the trial environments, look at the last week's session. And then use some solutions to move, it's create new entities in them and move them between the different environments and try and define an ALM process and find out which one works for you. Because like I said, it's almost personal or organizational set. My personal ALM process is different from my organization's one. My organization one is different one depending on the size of the project. And my organization's one will be different from other CRM consultants or Power Platform consultants as well. That's it as far as solutions.